Okay. Thanks for letting me know. He'll get at least part of it. Okay. He has been watching, by the way. I've been keeping up to see. All these, but songs, sorry, Jackson, you missed the first part of the lecture, first few minutes, because my storage was full. And I intentionally went through and deleted some stuff because it told me that yesterday when I was trying to record something, but it was still in my storage bin, my deleted stuff, so. Dialogue, read that first bit on dialogue and conversation and quotes. Okay, that's what this is about. That's what we just covered. Now we're talking about other things that go in quotation marks. Songs, yes, they're published on their own on the radio, but if the artist puts out an album, they don't put out one song. Used to be, you could go to the record store, yes, the music store, and buy singles. Okay, now you purchase the single on your iPhone or whatever you use for your music. Okay, but all these smaller things get quotation marks. And notice how these are kind of small. As far as real estate on a page, they're little, right? Little quotation marks. Whereas, and I know this is not in this lesson, but we will review this tomorrow, probably Monday, and we'll talk about this, and I'll write them both up here again so you'll have them. This is where people get confused. All of this gets quotation marks. When you're talking about stuff that gets underlining, if you're handwriting or italicized, if you're word processing on a computer, okay, then you're talking about epic poems versus short poems, okay? And what's an example of an epic poem? Beowulf. I know some of y'all have probably seen that movie. I don't recommend reading the poem. I tried reading that poem with my junior class, my first year teaching here, and it took us 2 weeks to get through what the lesson plan supposedly said. And when I say lesson plan, the book said should only take about 3 days. And you know me, I don't, slack. There was so much King James, and I'm not knocking the King James at all, but that era of talk, I mean, it was every line. I had to stop every line or every other line and explain what was happening. I don't recommend reading it. The movie's pretty good.
How long is the poem?
I believe it's in my, I know it's in my British literature book, and I want to say it's about 70 pages. And it took us, it's called an epic poem. It's published, it is published often on its own, much like a short story, a very short story would be. Okay, this happens to be in my literature book, this particular one. But they're called epic poems, epic meaning big, okay? Yeah, but I mean, if you've got, it tells a good story, but you got to have a lot of time on your hands to get through it and really understand what's going on. Okay, the names of short stories are in quotes. The names of books are underlined or italicized. Notice this takes up a lot more real estate. Underlining takes up a lot more room on a page than this does, okay? And really, if you're going to italicize the whole name, it takes up a lot more room in the italics than these two little things do. Okay, so big stuff. TV shows. Okay, the episode would get quotes, the name of the show, or the radio program, etc., would get underlining or italics. The name of an album, yes, I call it an album, okay? CD, whatever, Blu-ray, no, it's not a Blu-ray, is it?
No.
Not sound, okay. See, Miss Shoemate's just, yeah. All right, what do you call it when they produce, is it a CD when they produce the whole thing?
Album.
Is it still called an album?
Yeah.
See, I think of an album, I think of like the old big record, vinyl records. Yeah, okay, cool. All right, so the name of the newspaper or the magazine, the whole thing. Would get Right, New York Times, good. People, whatever, would get this. Underlining if you're handwriting, italics if you're typing. The name of the whole book would get underlining for italics. Couple other things, I'm not gonna write them up here until we actually do this, but the big, when you talk about big, you think large as far as space. The names of ships and trains and airplanes and spacecrafts, okay, they get italicized as well, okay? But there's nothing to compare it to here, so we'll save that for later. All right, single quotes, all right? Anytime you have something that has to be quoted inside of something else, you gotta do single quotes. The most often would be having one of these on the left inside of a quotation. Mr. Benson asked, have you read chapter, we'll pretend that's the name of it, chapter 5 in understanding, we could do italicized too in the middle, and I didn't even plan this, but that's cool. Understanding the times, because that was the Bible book. When he did senior Bible here, they did a book called Understanding the Times. It's based on, the title is based on, is it in Nehemiah? It's in one of the prophet books. It talks about, he had men who understood the times in the Old Testament. So, have you read chapter 5? This gets single quotes because we already have double quotes for what he's asking. Understanding the times. What's inside the double quotes is a question, so question mark goes inside the double quotes. Now, what happens if I had chapter 5 at the end of the sentence? We're going to pretend we got words here, right? And then we've got quote, so-and-so said, okay.
You have a single then a double?
You would have a single, good, and then a double. If it's a question mark, now if it's a period or a comma, then it goes inside all of them, right? If it's a question mark, this isn't asking a question, so you would have single around chapter 5, you would have question mark and then double. It's not gonna happen really often, but it could happen. It does happen. Okay. Oh, I know, this is so exciting, right? All right, they give you some examples there under single quotation marks. Quotation marks and other punctuation. And then we're done with quotes, and then we get to talk about ellipses a little bit, but there's not as much for that. I know this is a lot of stuff. They think you're big boys and girls. I told y'all this in 10th grade. They cram a bunch, instead of spreading it out more, they start cramming it all together more. Whether that be in a chapter, or whether that be a whole big bunch of stuff in one section, okay? The last thing here on quotation marks is other marks of punctuation. I just spoke to this a little bit. Periods and commas are always inside quotation marks, okay? They always either come right before, if you have one before, or they would go inside the closing, okay? So I'll write before. All right, if you have a colon or a semicolon, which we talked about just a few days ago, last week, these are always after your quotation marks, okay? And then we have these two, okay? And these will depend upon the quoted matter. And let me give you just a sentence or two explanation of that. Okay, what I mean by that is we have this example here where what's inside the quotes is a question. So the question mark, if this were an exclamation, it would go inside. But if there were a question being asked and then we had comma quotes and what was inside was not the question, part of the question, and it happens as well, you would have that question mark or exclamation if that were the case outside the quotes. Okay, so these two vary. These are always after, these are always inside/before, however you want to say that, okay? But these two do depend on what you're quoting. Is it asking a question? If the quoted matter is asking a question mark goes inside. Okay, I know this is just throwing stuff to y'all, I can tell. And it is a lot, but it is what it is. Okay, I'm on page 300. You're following along in the book. Let's talk about ellipses now. I'll run myself out of room because I do that. Oh, you were gonna take a picture. Oh well. He has it on the screen now. Is it still recording, I hope?
Yeah.
Thank you, okay. All right, so ellipses, all right? These are actually called ellipses. Ellipsis, if you have one, it's an ellipsis, but you never have one by itself. Ellipses, okay, is the three dots, all right? They are most often used if we leave out a word or perhaps a phrase or a sentence inside of the quotation marks, okay? A couple of things about this. Number one is very important. You can see this on your page in your book, right above where it says original there at the top of 300. Okay, it says, remember omissions are acceptable only if they do not change the meaning of the original. Okay? When you're this will come in handy when you're writing a research paper. If you've got a big old long quote and you don't want to put half your page a quote, but there are certain parts that apply, you may put ellipses for the parts that you don't carry over. But it's dishonest to leave out stuff if it changes the meaning. Okay, it happens in journalism all the time. Okay, I saw a story the other day. Alan Dershowitz, who is a big-time lawyer, has a huge lawsuit out against, pretty darn sure it's CNN, because he went on the Senate floor and was talking about, in prefacing the impeachment trial of Donald Trump, was talking about this is what you have to do and this is what's legal and this is what's not legal, okay? He gave an hour speech on that. They took this much of it and tried to twist and say he said basically the opposite of what his whole hour was on. Okay? And the man doesn't need the money and he doesn't want the money. He's already said the money he gets from the case, and he's very likely to get quite a bit, will go to charity. Okay? But it just goes to prove you've got to be careful if you're quoting somebody, okay? Make sure that you get the essence of what they're saying if you're going to leave stuff out, okay? So, you may have information here, you may have information here, okay? With the ellipses, with the left out part in between. That's fine if it's not essential to meaning here. Occasionally, you will see this, which is your period followed by the ellipses, okay? That only works if what comes after the ellipses, or what comes before and after the ellipses, is a complete idea, okay? So if you have a complete idea here, then you've left some out, and then you're going to have a complete idea here, you would put a period here, then your 3 space dots, and of course, whether it was capitalized in the first sentence or not, because remember, you're leaving stuff out in the original. If what comes after it's a complete idea, in which case you would be using this, you capitalize the next letter. Okay, that's perfectly fine. All right, another thing here about ellipses, 2 more things. We're almost done, I promise. If you go about halfway down on the page, under the Julius Caesar conquered Gaul, blah, 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 right under that it says ellipses are not needed at the beginning or end of a quoted passage. Okay? According to my geography book, the Gauls and then adopted Roman customs, and that's the end of it. Okay? That's the end of the idea. You don't have to have ellipses before adopted. Okay? The same if you're leaving out a few words at the beginning and then just continuing on, that we're at the very beginning. Finally, if you want to leave out words in a line of poetry or a song, particularly a hymn, okay, you technically can, I don't know why you would do this, and I'm not sure that this would ever be practical, or very seldom, quite frankly. You can do a whole line of dots, space dots, to leave out a line. Shows you've left out a line in a song or a poem, okay? Finally, halting or unfinished speech, look at this with me, down at the bottom of 300. Ellipses may also be found to show disruptions in the flow of speech. The disruption may be a hesitant pause in the middle of a sentence or a trailing off at the end of a sentence. If you're showing a pause in the middle, you just use the 3 space dots. However, if the disruption, you guys have seen me do this on the board a few times, if the disruption comes at the end of the sentence, you need your period and then 3 dots, okay? Here's an example. Surprised by the commotion at the back of the hall, the speaker faltered as he said, comma, quotes, and in conclusion, let me say, period, 3 quotes, or 3 dots, quotes, okay? Ellipses. All right, 12.1. There are 2 corrects on this section. It says, insert any missing quotation marks. If the sentence is already correct, write C in the blank. All right, number 1. Are you familiar with the book To the Best of My Ability? The American Presidents. And you're circling any unnecessary, inserting any missing. If it's correct, we write correct. Liana?
The quotes before to and after presidents don't need to be there.
No, because it's a book and they've italicized it correctly. You don't use both. Okay? Number 2, from the section George Washington to the section George W. Bush to the information on campaigns and inaugurations. The book is full of details about the president's words and deeds. Abby?
You put quotations around George W. Bush.
Good. One more together. Sam, you've got this one if you want it. I've seen your hand. Lincoln once confirmed that, quote, he could not always control things during the Civil War by saying, wow, okay, I'm looking at my book, that's weird, okay. That they've done, yeah. I claim not to have controlled events, but confess plainly that events have controlled me. Period, single quote, double quote. Got it, more than one issue here.
Okay, you don't need the first one before he.
Good, because it's not a direct quote.
And you would need another one before I, not just a single.
A regular one,
Yeah.
good. Get rid of the single or just add another one to make it double, okay?
And then you can get rid of the single one after me.
Get rid of the single one after me, good. All right, good deal. 7 of the remaining 10 are 2 of the remaining 7 are correct, I'll get it. 2 of the remaining 7 are correct. And then look at 12.2, woohoo. I don't like, this makes it harder, it really does, okay? But, they give you 2 choices, okay? So what you've got to just do is look at the difference in the 2 choices, and there should only be 1 difference, okay? And decide which one has been done correctly, okay? Let's maybe do a couple of these together, all right? I'm trying to see the difference here. On number 1.
Between is a responsibility.
Yeah, it's like.
Got it. Okay, which one's correct?
Hard
A is.
Look at the original, it is A, good. Okay. Number 2. Oh, that's a difference in, oh, that's a silly one. But it's A, they're both 3 dots, but remember, they've always got to be spaced. Your dots are spaced, they're not bum, bum, bum. You do, okay, yeah, it took me a second too to look at it. You got dot, space, dot, space, dot.
So it has to be dot space.
Yes, they've got to be, there's got to be space between your ellipses dots, okay? All right, you guys do 3 through 10 on either, in whichever order you choose. I will walk around because there will be questions. Okay. Okay. Yes. Okay, it's italicized because it's the name of a book, so you don't need quotation marks as well, so you gotta circle the two quarters, okay?
One minute. This one, I just forget, like, what you said, 'cause that, I remember, but I forget.
Okay, you're good, I'm trying to see the. Oh.
Cause there's only, here, it gives this phrase.
Only a little more,
Yeah.
okay, so they're saying A is wrong, show me where it is up here. This takes a minute, I remember. Unfortunately, in elections, since we're electing over the little one, okay, unfortunately. Okay, because this one gets rid of stuff that matters.
Okay.
You can't do that.
Okay.
Okay, so that's why it's B. Okay, on number 5, on the passage, you are looking for the one, there's one of them that leaves out information that's vital. The other one does not, okay? You want to choose the one that does not leave out important information. But who could guess who said, yeah, that, again, is usually a dead giveaway to take it, yeah, yep. And I forgot to turn this off. This is going on forever.